Welcome everybody to today's lesson, CSS counters. And what are CSS counters? These are variables that are managed by CSS. And the values of these variables can be incremented by rules. And we're going to take a look at uh, some of the uses of this. So we're going to go straight into the code section and look at some examples. So, like I said, counters let you adjust the appearance of some content based on its placement within the document. So let's do an example. So I'm going to just create a sample HTML. So this is my sample HTML, and the only thing in here is a bunch of H1 and H2 elements, right? I have a bunch of H2 elements here, as you can see. Go to the gym, play soccer, go to the movies, and rest day. So if I refresh this, you can see the uh, the H2 elements, right? Okay. So what we want to do here now is to use the counter, right? So what we want to do is to be able to specify uh, uh, a count of these H2s, right? So in the style section, I am going to first Okay, so the first thing is to uh, create a variable, right? So you can create it in the body, right? And then I'm gonna set and the attribute we're gonna use here, we're gonna set the counter resets, right? And what this counter reset does is I'm gonna set this section to the as a value for the counter reset. Okay. So this acts like the variable in question, right? So you can see that property accepts one or more names of counters. So like these are the identifiers, right? So good. So we have set this uh, counter reset to section. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to create, because we have H2s, right? I want to be able to put the increment numbers before the H2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say H2 and I'm going to use the pseudo elements and say before, right? Meaning I want it before the H2 elements, right? And now I can say counter increment. So increase the value of the counter. So which counter are we increasing? Section, right? So you're gonna put in increment the value in section by one, right? Okay. And now we need the content, right? Which is what the content is going to be. So here I am going to say section, then I'm going to say space, and I'm going to pass this counter, and in here I'm going to put in the name of the counter, which is section. Okay, then maybe colon just to give some space. Okay, so we have this content, and I'm just going to go over what everything is once it's done. Good. So then I have this. So I'm going to refresh this, and you can see that section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. Good. So the first thing that we did here was we did a counter reset, right? And this creates the counter, right? So it creates the variable section where you want to store your counter value, right? Now we decided that we wanted to put this counter before our h2s, right? So we needed to do the h2 with a pseudo element before so that it comes before it. If you wanted it to go after it, you have to use after, right? So we want it to be before the h2 element, so we use before. And then inside the style, what we decided to do is that we needed to increment the counter or the variable that stores our counter, because when it gets to the second one, we want it to be 2. So this one allows you to increment the counter before you display it, right? So we always increment the counter first. So counter increment is what you need to use, and we are saying that increment the counter. Which counter are we incrementing? Section, right? So we pass the value of the counter to counter increment, and then the content is inserts generated content. Whatever you put here, that's the content that is going to be inserted. So we wanted to insert section space the counter section, or the counter as a function, as the value of a counter to an element, right? So anytime you call counter and then the name of the counter, the value of what is stored in the counter is added, right? So in this case, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have your colon. So that is what this is doing right here. Good. We can also nest counters together. So let's take an example of that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just comment this out and comment this out so we can have the space to do that example. So I'm going to, so this is an example that I want to use here, right? In here, I have an H1, which says United States, and the H2s under this is Arizona and California. These are states in Arizona, right? So these will be places in the country, right? So if you take Ghana, we have Accra and Kumasi, which are places that exist in Ghana. In India, we have Mumbai and Delhi. So that is what I want to use. So I want to create a counter that counts countries and another counter that counts the places that exist in the countries. Right. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can already guess that I need two counters, right? So let's do it. So I have my first one. I'm going to have in my body, I'm going to create my counter reset. Stop, not rests, resets, right? And I'm going to call this countries, country, right? Okay, that does it. And then I'm going to create an H1, and in my H1, I'm going to create counter reset. Now, country, what is going on with me today? Counter reset, and I'm going to call this, should I say cities, or I'll say, yeah, places. Yes, that's good, right? So now I have my two counters, country and places. Now I want to be able to place the the first counter before the H1, right? So I'm going to create H1 before, right? And then I'm going to say first counter re-increment, right? Because I want to increment the counter, and the counter that I want to increment is what? Country. So that after every H1, I only increment the country. So this is going to be country 1, country 2, country 3, right? So what will be the content of that? So I have my content, and I am going to call this country, some space, and I'm going to call the function counter, and then what is the variable or the counter that I want to, it's going to be called country, right? Country. And then maybe a colon, maybe. Then I can end this right here. Okay, so this is gonna be the for the country part, right? And then what about the places within the country? It's the H2s, right? So I have to keep account of that. So I'm gonna call H2. I'm gonna call before, and then I'm gonna increment, counter increment, but this time it's gonna be for the places, and then I'm gonna create a content also, and then for the content here, I want to be a little bit more dynamic here. I'm gonna say for counter for the country, right? And I'm gonna add a dots, and then I'm gonna have the counter for the places, right? And then maybe I need something like this. Okay, so that does it. And then I'm gonna refresh this, and then you can see the first one gave me country one, United States. And then under United States, I had 1.1 because I'm printing out the counter for the country, which in this case is at 1, right? The count is at 1, and then Arizona, which is the first one, will be set to 1, right? So when I come to the H2, it's gonna move the counter for increment of places to 2. So when I want to see the content for California, the counter for the country still stays at 1, but that for the places move to 2. So you're going to have 1.2. And then you go to the country 2, right? And now it's 2.1, 2.2, and then 3.1, 3.2. So that explains how this is working. Good. So this kind of explains what the counters are. You can play around with it and have some unique examples for yourselves. But thank you and see you in the next lesson. Bye.